Hello and welcome to Bonhill Geography. In today's video we'll look at the environmental impacts of industrial development in Nigeria. As one of Africa's largest economies, Nigeria's experienced rapid industrial growth, but this progress has come with some significant environmental challenges. Firstly, we'll look at air pollution. This is where factories are going to release toxic gases and particulate matter. These are going to contribute to air pollution and respiratory problems among local populations. One specific example of this is the gas flaring that takes place in the Niger Delta region, with benzene, a toxic essentially compound, increasing rates of cancer for many of the Nigerian residents living near these sites. Now, water pollution is also another significant problem, with industrial waste being discharged into water bodies without adequate treatment. This can contaminate water sources and harm lots of different types of aquatic life. Next, we have soil contamination. This is where hazardous chemicals from industrial processes, for example oil extraction, can seep into the soil. This significantly affects the ability to actually have agriculture take place at all, and obviously will impact the local ecosystem. As many of you know, if a turtle, for example, gets covered in oil, it is likely to die. Urbanization has also led to the significant expansion of cities like Lagos and Kano. That results in various environmental problems, but one being mainly is the expansion of the city itself, meaning it's going to eat into greenbelt land and disrupt many nearby ecosystems. Now, because of this increase in urbanization, it's rare that waste disposal systems are actually well looked after or even put in at all. That's resulted in the accumulation of solid waste, but also sewage, which is going to pollute land and water bodies. Remember, sewage is going to cause diseases like cholera for people, but environmentally it's going to increase the amount of nitrogen in the water. This could even lead to the effects like eutrophication, where there's less oxygen essentially available for anything living underneath it, resulting in the loss of aquatic life. There's also potentially increased air and noise pollution, mainly because of more vehicle traffic and industrial activities in these urban areas, because it's easier to have a factory nearby where people live. Now, that's led again to this higher levels of air and noise pollution. That's going to affect both the health and well-being of residents, but also of many migratory species of bird, for example. Now, if you have studied Shell as one of the main things of, your main TNC example for Nigeria, then you will know that the extraction of oil and minerals has had devastating effects on the environment, particularly in the Niger Delta or in Ogoni land. Now, one of the worst oil spills was in 2008 and 2009, called the Bodo oil spill. Oil spills from that ruptured pipeline owned by Shell released 600,000 barrels of crude oil into the creeks of the Niger Delta itself. That spill obviously destroyed massive amounts of aquatic ecosystems, contaminated drinkable water, and severely impacted the livelihoods of local communities who depended on this water source for farming and fishing. Now, it is important to note that not all oil spills, that's quite hard to say, are actually Shell's fault. Because in Nigeria, many local people are disgruntled towards Shell, more because of the lack of employment or lack of share of wealth, and so they choose to bunker oil. Now, bunker oil is where they significantly disrupt oil processes or oil transfer processes, break it open, and then steal it to sell on the black market. Again, they're not going to obviously clean that up, and so that's going to lead to significant oil spills. Now, with the expansion of commercial farming to feed a growing population, that's led to widespread deforestation. That's going to obviously affect biodiversity and contribute towards climate change. Here we can see an example of peanut farming, which actually takes place in the north of the Nigeria. Now, another major concern within Nigeria, particularly in the north again, is this idea of soil erosion. Check out my video on desertification in paper 1 if you haven't done so already. But the removal of these trees has led to an increase in soil erosion, which is going to reduce the fertility of the land and affect agricultural productivity. However, managing all of these different factors is actually very challenging for Nigeria due to several main reasons. So Nigeria has to balance economic growth with environmental protection. Now, balancing industrial growth with environmental sustainability is a significant challenge because the country is trying to industrialise and improve the standard of living and quality life for its people. As we said, this normally comes at the expense of the environment, where the environment is destroyed in order to create economic future. or economic sustainability. Now, another significant thing to think about is the role of the government and TNCs, because transnational corporations like Shell and their impact of their operations complicate regulation with the government itself. If the regulations are too strict, then TNCs may simply move to a different country if they become too restrictive. So as a result, they have to comply or kind of aid the TNC to destroy their country, but also improve the economic futures of the country itself. Kind of complicated, right? Now, rural to urban migration is still a major concern as well, because rapid migration leads to unplanned urban development. We talked earlier about the development of lack of development of waste disposal systems. This can also lead to slums being built up around a city. Now, that's difficult to manage as many workers are still paid very poorly, resulting in the government having less taxing revenue to improve their living conditions or to improve, for example, waste management. It's also important to note that many people within these slums would also be in the informal employment sector, meaning they wouldn't be paying any tax at all in some situations. Now, our last factor is talking about farming, because efficient farming practices are needed all over the world, but they must be implemented in an environmentally sustainable way. Now, this is difficult as many farmers are uneducated and may be reluctant to actually change. It's also important to note that many farmers are simply growing food for themselves within Nigeria, even still today, so enforcing change again is going to be difficult. As a reminder, if you're growing food for yourself and not really selling any products, we call this subsistence. Here's a summary of all of the environmental impacts as a result of economic growth or industrial growth within Nigeria. Apologies for the small text, I wanted to fit it all in one slide. If you found this video useful, please do give it a thumbs up, and do bear in mind that you could be asked a 6-mark question about how the environment is affected by industrial growth, and so you can tell me about Shell, or you could say about any of the following in the left-hand categories. Thank you for watching Bonhill Geography. I'll catch you in the next video.